Surrounded by Idiots, The Trap of Similarity Bias by Leslie Rahansi. Be honest. Who's the person at work who makes you think, how did you get this far without adult supervision? You have one. I have one. We all have that one colleague who overthinks everything and wants a subcommittee to review the subcommittee's findings, or the one who makes a snap decision and moves on without any real data to go on, or the one who needs all the data before they can get into motion, the one who says, I just have a gut feeling, or the person who wants harmony over addressing the real challenges, the one who walks into the meeting and detonates it just to see what happens. At some point, if we're courageous enough to admit it, we've all muttered a private version of the phrase popularized by Thomas Erickson in his best-selling book, Surrounded by Idiots. It's a funny title and also reveals something uncomfortable. Most of us have silently nominated someone for that award. But what if they're not idiots? Before you write them off as annoying, flawed, or completely out to lunch, consider this. What if they're simply wired differently than you? One of the most important leadership lessons I've learned and relearned is this: difference is not deficiency. In Chapter 4 of Coaching Life, I explore personality types and wiring, not as labels and not as excuses, but as lenses. Our wiring shapes how we process information, communicate, make decisions, and interpret behavior. It influences how quickly we speak, how much detail we need, how much risk we tolerate, and how we respond to tension. Carl Jung's early work on psychological types laid the foundation for many modern personality tools. Later models, such as DISC, Insights Discovery, and others, translated those preferences into practical language that leaders could actually use. Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence expanded the conversation by showing that success in leadership depends less on technical ability and more on self-awareness and relational skill. And even with all this research available, we still fall into a very human trap. We assume that our way is the right and reasonable way, the grown-up way, the way that should probably be laminated and handed out during onboarding training. How similarity bias bites us in the butt. There's strong evidence that we're naturally drawn to people who think and behave like us. Social psychologists call this similarity bias. We trust people who feel similar, interpret their behavior more generously, and see their strengths more clearly. When someone mirrors our pace, tone, or priorities, we experience it as competence. When someone does the opposite, we experience it as friction or incompetence or a threat to everything we hold dear. Think about the people in your life and see if some of these contrasts feel familiar. These are not personality types, just examples of how different wiring can show up at work. The analytical leader experiences the fast decision maker as reckless. The fast decision maker experiences the analytical leader as paralyzing. The relationship-focused leader experiences the direct one as abrasive. The direct leader experiences the relational one as overly sensitive. Notice what just happened. In less time than it takes to refill your coffee, we turned a style preference into a personality defect. We moved from wiring difference to moral judgment in seconds. But your irritation is just information. It's not proof of a character flaw in someone else. It's just a signal that something about this interaction is rubbing against your own wiring and preferences. It's your nervous system flashing a small yellow light that says, this is not how I think or would do this. In Chapter 13 of Coaching Life, I write about relational awareness and the ability to notice not only what's happening between us, but what's happening inside of us too. When we feel a surge of frustration in a meeting, that reaction is data that tells us something about our preferences. It doesn't necessarily tell us that there's something wrong with the other person. Decision-making, where wiring collides. It is in the arena of decision-making that we can really see wiring differences in action. Some people process externally by thinking out loud, and we can hear their brain working in real time. They explore possibilities verbally, and silence typically makes them uncomfortable. Others process internally. They need time to reflect before speaking. Rapid-fire questions or fast-paced discussion feels chaotic and risky. They look calm, which makes the external processors slightly more uncomfortable. Some of us decide quickly once we recognize a pattern, and we're comfortable acting with only partial information. Others want to thoroughly examine risk, implications, downstream impact before committing to action. There is no inherently superior approach, although each camp is usually convinced that theirs is. Research on cognitive diversity suggests that teams with varied thinking styles can outperform more homogeneous teams, particularly when tackling complex problems. The challenge is not the diversity itself, it's our inability to interpret it without judgment. Instead of saying, "You move too fast," we think, "You're careless." Instead of saying, "You need more time," we think, "You lack backbone." When leaders collapse wiring differences into character flaws, it can have a devastating effect on team culture. EQ is not about being nice. Emotional intelligence is often misunderstood as simply empathy or warmth or emotional expression. Those are elements of it, certainly, but they're not the whole picture. At its core, emotional intelligence is a behavioral range. It is the capacity to notice your default wiring and stretch beyond it when the situation requires something else. If you are naturally direct, can you soften your delivery so that a more relational colleague can hear you? If you're highly relational, can you tolerate a sharper exchange without personalizing it? If you decide quickly, can you slow down long enough to invite dissent or diverse inputs? If you prefer deep analysis, can you act before you feel completely ready? We can learn to adjust our communication based on who is in the room without abandoning our authenticity. By expanding our repertoire, we can connect and communicate effectively with everyone on our team, not just the ones who are wired like us. That expansion requires effort that can be uncomfortable and sometimes even feel threatening. Why change feels so hard. In Chapter 11, I explore the psychology of change. Our wiring becomes familiar territory because it served us well. It helped us succeed, after all. So when someone suggests we adjust it, even slightly, it can feel like an attack on our competence. This is where leadership maturity shows up. Can you hold two truths at once? Your wiring is valid, and it is not universal. You are not wrong for preferring speed, detail, harmony, candor, reflection, action, structure, or improvisation. But when you lead others, your preferences can't be the only operating system in the room. The leader who refuses to stretch into different communication styles and preferences creates an invisible hierarchy that says, my way equals professional, your way equals problematic. And that can seem quite ego-driven to the people we lead. The next time someone triggers you, pause. Instead of asking, what's wrong with them? Try asking, what is different about them? What pace do they prefer? How do they process information? What makes them feel secure? What makes them feel pressured? You may discover that the person you labeled as difficult is actually providing something your team needs. The cautious analyst may be preventing a costly mistake. The bold decision maker may be preventing stagnation. The relational leader may be building trust in ways you cannot see. Difference is not deficiency. It's often the thing that brings the most value. Your coaching challenge. Think of one person at work who typically activates you. Step 1. Name the irritation clearly. What exactly do they do that gets under your skin? Is it their pace, their tone, their need for detail, their bluntness, their hesitancy? Vague irritation is not useful data. Be specific. Step 2. Decode the wiring beneath the behavior. Translate each irritation into a neural description of their preference. Fast might mean decisive. Slow might mean reflective. Direct might mean candid. Diplomatic might mean attuned to impact. Ask yourself, what decision-making style is this? How do they appear to process information, externally or internally? And what might make them feel competent or secure in a discussion? Step 3. Examine your own bias. Which of their behaviors clashes most strongly with your default wiring? What does that reveal about your preferences? Where might you be interpreting differences as deficiency? Step 4. Look for the value. Where could this style strengthen the team? What risk does it mitigate? What blind spot of yours might it be balancing? In what way are you grateful for this? Step 5. Choose a deliberate stretch. Select one small behavior adjustment for your next interaction. If you move quickly, slow your pace and invite input. If you analyze deeply, commit sooner. If you soften everything, be clearer. If you're blunt, add context. Do not reinvent your personality. Expand your range. Step 6. After the interaction, reflect. What shifted in the dynamic? How did it shape their reaction? What did you learn about them? What did you learn about yourself? Resources for exploring personality and wiring. If this topic intrigues you and you'd like to go deeper, there are several credible starting points. These tools are most powerful when used not as labels, but as mirrors to help us see our patterns, widen our behavioral range, and interpret others with more generosity. Thomas Erickson, Surrounded by Idiots, a popular business book that interprets behavioral differences through a simplified, disc-based lens. William Moulton Marston's DISC theory, the behavioral model that later informed many workplace assessments. Insights Discovery, a Jungian-based color model widely used in organizations to build self-awareness and relational skill. The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, a structured application of Jung's work that explores preferences in perception and decision-making. Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence, the research that expanded leadership conversations beyond technical competence. The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Don Richard Rizzo and Russ Hudson, a deeper exploration of motivation, fear, and developmental growth patterns. Carl Jung's Psychological Types, the original foundation for much of modern personality theory. And Coaching Life, Navigating Life's Most Common Coaching Topics by Leslie Rahansi, available in paperback and audiobook. If you're ready to grow your behavioral range and lead across personality differences with more skill, reach out for a free exploratory executive coaching conversation at leslierahansi.com. Have a smooth day.